But before we get into today's story, our video today is brought to you by Manta Sleep. So, full honesty, I've never been a great sleeper. I tend to overthink a lot. I scroll YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all of it, just like a lot of you probably, and I'm not exactly sure what to do about it. Until I got the Manta Sleep Mask that has actually helped me shift into real, deep rest. I've never been someone at all who sleeps with a mask on, just full transparency. But when Manta Sleep sent it to me, I let my girlfriend try it on, because she has used a mask in the past, and she loved it so much that it did inspire me to try it on. And guess what? It has done wonders for my sleep. It's not just a piece of fabric you throw on. The design is super adjustable. It actually fits my face without pressing onto my eyes. That's a big feature. And the material is very soft. I can move around, roll over, sleep on my side, and it doesn't move. And with summer creeping in, earlier sunrises, brighter evenings, it's easy to underestimate just how much that extra light messes with your sleep, right? And now's the perfect time to try it, because Manta has got their Beat the Light sale from May 26th to June 8th. Spend $99, you get 15% off. Spend $149, you get 20% off. No code needed, it just applies at checkout. And if you're one of the first 500 customers, you get a free sleep accessory kit. That's a good deal. So, if you've been thinking about taking your sleep more seriously, or just want to nap like a pro, this is the move for you. Head to mantasleep.com, use my code SWGalaxy for an extra 10% off at checkout, and take control of your sleep space. Thanks to Manta Sleep for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to the video. Our story begins on Geonosis as Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi is attempting to send a transmission back to the Jedi Temple. But as Kenobi was waiting for R4 to locate a signal, two blaster pistol shots fired out of nowhere. One of them shot down the antenna that R4 was using, and the other blasted right into R4, as the droid was immediately destroyed. Obi-Wan ignited his lightsaber, flipping backwards to get behind a large rock, and from his robe pocket, he pulled out a holo projector. It wouldn't transmit right to Anakin's ship, and he couldn't leave a message. He needed Anakin to have his holo projector on him. It was his last hope. Obi-Wan flicked it on, turning to block blaster fire from the bounty hunter and a pair of droidekas that rolled up the mountain. And across the galaxy on Tatooine, Anakin heard his own holo projector beeping, and he answered to see an extremely distressed Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan was able to get out only a few words, saying he's on Geonosis, before Django shot the holo projector, and Kenobi was forced to surrender. And on Tatooine, Anakin and Padme would hurry back to their ship. Padme said they should contact Coruscant, but in this scenario, Anakin didn't know why Obi-Wan was on Geonosis. All he knew was that his master, his brother, was in grave danger, and if the Separatists see a ship from Coruscant arriving, they could just kill Obi-Wan. Anakin said that if they're going to rescue Obi-Wan, it will have to be a stealth mission. And in just a short amount of time, Anakin and Padme would indeed go to Geonosis, get trapped in the droid machinery area, and subsequently be captured by Jango Fett and the droids. So now, Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Padme were on Geonosis, set for execution, and the Jedi on Coruscant had no idea about any of it. Inside the Geonosis base, Dooku would tell Obi-Wan about Darth Sidious, and he would offer for Obi-Wan to join him to defeat the Sith. Obi-Wan would decline, telling himself that Dooku lies, but a voice in the back of his mind had to wonder what if he did join Dooku, and soon he would be placed into the arena for execution. And in here, Anakin and Padme would find Obi-Wan, and the events would get underway. All three of them would handle their respective beasts, and soon all three were riding the Reek when the droidekas rolled in, preparing to fire. Dooku waved his hand to finish this, and in this moment, Anakin could think of only one thing. He could not let Padme and Obi-Wan die like he let his mother die. He flipped off of the Reek, unleashing a force push that destroyed 4 of the droidekas. Obi-Wan quickly joined in, but Anakin was moving like never before, running and jumping to each droideka to eliminate them. Together, he and Obi-Wan would use their force powers to dodge blaster bolts, tear the droids apart, and when it was over, Anakin allowed himself a small breath of relief. But then, he heard Padme just softly call out his name. Anakin turned to see Jango Fett aiming his blaster right at Padme, and for a second that seemed to last an hour, Anakin and Padme would lock eyes. Before Anakin could move, Django fired. Padme would fall lifeless to the ground. Obi-Wan acted, slamming a force wave of his hand into the sand. The sand flew into the air, hiding them from view, and Obi-Wan had to drag Anakin to the open gate. They reached the gate before security could recover. and Obi-Wan pushed Anakin through before locking the doors behind him. Anakin turned, begging Obi-Wan not to do this. He can't lose him too. And Obi-Wan, with the most serious expression and tone of voice, just told Anakin to trust him. He ordered Anakin to leave without him, and Obi-Wan ran back into the arena. Anakin was forced to run. In the arena, Dooku was looking down at Padme's body when Obi-Wan ran back in with his hands up. He yelled up to Dooku that he will take the offer from earlier, and Dooku knew he should just execute this Jedi. But his intrigue got the better of him. Despite the Geonosians cheering, he would tell Django to stun Kenobi, and Obi-Wan fell hard to the sand, captured, but alive. As for Anakin, he would order R2 to set Padme's ship to autopilot as a distraction, and Anakin would go on to take a speeder and steal a separatist transport waiting in one of the hangars. He was able to pick up R2 and most of C-3PO on the way out. Anakin was only moving right now because he was masking his emotions with darkness, using the pain and the anger as fuel to help him escape. He would take off to the Jedi Temple, and on Geonosis, Obi-Wan would eventually wake up right back where all of it started. Once more, he was trapped inside of the ray shield prison, with Dooku just pacing in front of him. Dooku spoke quietly, telling Obi-Wan he knows he does not truly intend on joining him in this war. He knows this was only a distraction to get Anakin away safely. Obi-Wan cracked a small smile, saying that if that were the case, then it worked pretty well. Dooku nodded, then told Obi-Wan that even so, he does sense at least a small part of him is curious about this Darth Sidious, and if he does truly control the Republic. Dooku remarked that Kenobi has more of his master in him than he knows, and he once more has two options: learn the dark side of the Force from Dooku, the pathway to save the galaxy, or die today. Obi-Wan knew he had to live. He told Anakin to trust that it would be alright. So Obi-Wan would decide to play the role of dark side acolyte. It would all be a ploy to simply stay alive, and Dooku knew this, but Dooku knew the power of the dark side and just how compelling it can be once it is let in. Later on Coruscant, Anakin would return to the Jedi Temple, and he would find Yoda and Mace Windu alone in the council chambers. Anakin would barely be able to get the words out. Dooku and the Separatists executed Senator Amidala, and they captured or killed Obi-Wan so that he could escape. And with this news, there would be no more deliberation about anything. The clone army on Kamino was ready, and with the death of a Republic senator, the Jedi and the Republic would immediately spring into action to fight back. The Clone Wars would officially begin. Jedi would command legions of clone troopers as they began to spread into the galaxy. They were already many steps behind the Separatist war machine that launched their armies into the galaxy from Geonosis just a bit ago, but the Republic was moving to counter them wherever they could. Jedi masters like Windu, Plo Koon, and Depabalaba Kierimundi went from sitting in their council seats to fighting at the front lines of a galactic war. But not all Jedi would be allowed into combat roles. As Jedi were spread across the galaxy, Grand Master Yoda would personally assign Anakin to protect the Jedi archives, keeping him stationed inside of the temple indefinitely. Yoda knew how much Obi-Wan meant to Anakin, and he quickly could tell how much Padme also meant to Anakin. With both of them missing or dead, along with the fact that Yoda felt through the Force when Anakin slaughtered the Tuskens, it was more than enough to keep Anakin grounded in the temple for the time being. Yoda would indeed enter into his share of battles whenever he was needed, but he would spend a lot of time alone with Anakin, trying to get the young Jedi to open up a bit more. It was clear that the dark side surrounded Anakin, but Yoda would watch as Anakin quickly shifted from being a depressed, angry, frustrated Jedi that lost two close friends and was being kept away from battle, to a somewhat obsessed reader of the archives. What Yoda didn't know was that Anakin was searching for a way to bring her back. After nearly a decade of thinking about Padme, Anakin finally had her. They loved each other, and Anakin's final memory of her was the Mandalorian bounty hunter killing her in cold blood. Anakin decided to put everything he had into the mysteries of the Force. He would bring her back. He had to. And this would consume him for months. As for Obi-Wan, the royal castle of Sereno became both Obi-Wan's prison and his home. The nights were long, the walls were cold, and the war felt a galaxy away. And here in the halls of House Dooku, Obi-Wan stood beneath paintings of long-dead nobles and slept in quarters built for warriors that were long gone. In the silence, Kenobi would tell himself that this was a necessary mission. He joined Dooku in order to undermine the Separatist alliance, bring it down from the inside. but isolation was carving into him. He'd pushed Anakin away without telling him why exactly. The Jedi were likely assuming he was dead. Padme's death haunted him, as he knew that he and Anakin should have protected her. And every day, Dooku was there to fill the silence. Dooku wasn't exactly pushing Obi-Wan towards the dark. Instead, he was pulling subtly with truths that were hard to ignore, grievances Obi-Wan had long buried under duty. He spoke of corruption in the Senate, blind obedience of the Jedi to follow whatever that Senate commands. He showed Obi-Wan CIS intercepted comms from Republic lobbyists, secret orders from Palpatine's circle, maps of clone trooper movements, pre-made battle plans, long before war had even begun. It was all a ploy, and the more Obi-Wan listened, the more he felt his grip on the Council's galaxy views begin to slip. It wasn't seduction that Dooku was using to push Kenobi into the dark. It was slow erosion. Dooku knew that deep down, Obi-Wan would soon see the truth, and training sessions from Dooku would follow. Not the rigid training of the Jedi Temple, but raw primal exercises built around intuition and control and survival. Dooku would drop Obi-Wan into the Sereno forest with nothing but the Force, and in order to survive the predators out here, Obi-Wan would need to call upon powers from the Force that were hidden deep within himself. The anger at Padme's death, the pain of abandoning Anakin, the guilt of surviving Geonosis. These feelings, Dooku said, were not chains to restrict Kenobi, but instead they were like torches to light his path forward. And when Kenobi would emerge from the forest, he was more powerful, more Sith every single time. Obi-Wan indeed began to feel something shift. His lightsaber techniques were sharper, more aggressive. His presence in the Force was heavier. He stopped meditating to calm his thoughts and started meditating to focus them. Over time, Dooku stopped treating him like a guest and more like a true apprentice. Ventress was useful, but Dooku now saw her as a temporary assassin. Grievous was a monstrosity, but he had his uses. As for Kenobi, he had real potential. He informed Kenobi on strategic meetings, allowed him to listen in as he commanded small missions on neutral systems, gave him access to restricted data on Sith history and Jedi revisionism. Obi-Wan told himself he was gathering intel, preparing for a final betrayal to bring Dooku down. But when he looked in the mirror, he saw someone else. Someone who wasn't sure if he was still playing a role or slowly becoming it. Alone on Sereno, under the watchful eye of the man who once taught his master, Obi-Wan was unsure of the path he would soon take. And back with Anakin, as war continued to rage throughout the galaxy, meticulously planned out by Darth Sidious, Anakin was still stuck in the temple, losing hope of ever finding a way to bring Padme back. Yoda was much more distracted with keeping the Order together, as more Jedi fell every day. The temple was vulnerable, and Darth Sidious would soon take advantage of this, sending two of the most lethal bounty hunters in the galaxy on a mission to recover a holocron containing names of Force-sensitive children from the archives. The two hunters would plan out this mission, and it would soon begin, with Cad Bane and Django Fett. For Anakin, it would begin as a ripple in the Force, and as he stared into another holobook, he felt a presence in the archives that didn't belong. After months without action, Anakin moved on instinct, deeper into the archives, where he soon would find wreckage, broken access panels, incapacitated security droids, and the soft glow of a holocron vault that had been opened. Cad Bane's handiwork, and he was not alone. Django Fett flew through the temple vaults with quiet ease, cutting down defenses with a vibroblade, as Cad Bane helped shut down other security systems. Anakin entered the large vents, tracing Django by listening to echoes and feeling the Force. And after a chase, before Django could escape with a holocron, Anakin found him atop a temple spire vent. Anakin saw Django, and his mind had a flash of the Geonosis arena, the blaster fire, Padme's final scream. It all came back in a rush. The storm he'd been working so hard to suppress broke wide open. He wasn't the Jedi Guardian of the temple anymore. He was the boy who failed to save his mother, failed to save Obi-Wan, failed to save Padme, and he was standing face to face with the man who took her away. Django couldn't believe it. Out of all the 10,000 Jedi, why did it have to be Anakin? And Anakin would emerge from the ventilation shafts just seconds behind Django, chasing the bounty hunter across Coruscant as Django began vaulting between rooftops, sliding down rails like he'd lived a lifetime in the underworld. Anakin followed with his own reckless speed, wind tearing at his cloak as he leapt across traffic lanes, balanced along beams after waiting so long to get in on the action. His lightsaber pulsed in his hand as he hunted the man who'd executed his love. Django cut through alleyways, slipped into the lower levels, weaved through markets and maintenance tunnels until he reached an old warehouse deep in a lower sector. He was convinced that he'd lost Anakin. He expected Cad Bane to be here waiting, but instead, he found Anakin right behind him, breathless, furious, eyes lit up with barely contained power. There would be no negotiation here, just a blade igniting in the dark. The duel that followed would be brutal. Django would fire a volley of blaster shots mid-roll, but Anakin deflected them with quick turns of his saber. He lunged, aiming to disable Django's gauntlet, but the bounty hunter activated his flamethrower mid-swing, forcing Anakin to twist into a backflip. Django flew above a shipping container, launching a whipcord snare. It wrapped around Anakin's wrist, dragging him across the floor, but Anakin used the momentum, twisting in midair to land on the wall and launch himself upward. He severed the cable mid-jump, collided with Django, sending them both crashing into a wall. They both scrambled to their feet. Django activated his sonic charges, hurling one across the room. Anakin kicked it back with the force before it detonated, then used the distraction to rush forward, ducking under a wrist rocket, driving Django back with a flurry of strikes, and sparks flew as the lightsaber clashed against Beskar. Django's armor saved him more than once, but it wouldn't protect him forever. A final force shove hurled him into a steel column. His helmet cracked, blaster skidded across the floor. He was beaten. Anakin moved in, dark side flowing through him as he raised his blade, face tight with vengeance. This was for Padme. But before he could strike, a new voice would pierce the darkness. It was the voice of a child. Anakin froze, his gaze shifted, and from behind a cargo stack, a small boy stepped into view. Boba Fett. And Boba held up a blaster. Django, coughing blood, crawled between Anakin and the boy, arms spread, no more fight left in him. He pleaded, not for his own life, but for his son's. He admitted that he'd taken the job that led to Padme's death, but it had been just that, a job, nothing more, a simple mission. It was never personal. Dooku is the one he truly wants, or the one who commands Dooku. Anakin's hand trembled, blade still humming inches from Django's throat. He looked over to the small boy, and for a moment, he saw himself again, kneeling in the Tusken camp, saber dripping, corpses all around. He remembered that fear, that loss, the screaming. He remembered what it felt like to be consumed. He swore to never let it happen again. He swore he didn't want it to happen to anyone else. And if he killed Django now in front of his son, he would become the same monster he'd once feared becoming, and he would allow Boba to become a vengeful monster like him. So, he didn't want to leave this boy without any parents. Anakin couldn't do it. He closed his eyes, and he lowered his blade. It's what Padme would have wanted. Anakin told Django this is no life for a child. This cycle had to end here. So he promised that if Django helps him, if he brings Anakin to the one who gave the order to steal the holocron, then he will ensure that the Republic grants him a full pardon to live a free life. Django, broken and breathless, would look to his son, and then to the Jedi who'd spared him. Slowly, silently, he nodded. He will take Anakin to the man who ordered this mission, the man called Sidious. Meanwhile, things on Sereno had been shifting. Over the 6 months of this war, this mission had become something quite complicated for Obi-Wan. In Dooku, he'd expected to find a tyrant, a manipulator, a twisted shadow of a once great Jedi Master. And he did find those things initially, but beneath them, he found a man who did truly want to make the galaxy better, but had lost himself in the process, and Obi-Wan was helping to bring him back. The two men had clashed in philosophy and temperament, and somewhere along the way, through arrangement, had been stopped being so conflicted. Obi-Wan was no longer simply undercover. Dooku was no longer a threat. They were something stranger with each other, almost like a forced or found family. Dooku began to see flickers of a young Qui-Gon in Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan carried the weight of the Jedi's hypocrisy the way Dooku once had, but with none of the bitterness, only sadness, as Obi-Wan began to see the truth. Dooku, once resolved to bend the galaxy to his image, found himself questioning whether that image had ever been his to begin with, and whether he would be left standing when it all comes to fruition. He'd surrounded himself with warlords, bankers, droids, but he now found comfort in the way Obi-Wan held him accountable without hatred. It changed him, not all at once, not completely, but enough to matter, enough to start making him remember who he used to be. For Obi-Wan, the lines would blur even more. The longer he stayed, the more Dooku's words began to make sense. The more cracks in the Jedi Order began to look like fractures that were ignored for far too long. He still didn't trust Dooku completely. He wasn't naive, but he understood him. He saw the pain in him, the honesty behind his deflection. Dooku wasn't Sidious. He never wanted to rule through pure fear, but his desire for change and working with the Sith changed him for the worse. In their long walks through the gardens of Sereno, late-night discussions on Republic corruption, silent mornings of meditation, something grew between them. They were both men who'd lost their faith in different ways, both searching for a path forward that didn't involve blind loyalty. Slowly, quietly, they began to imagine a different kind of galaxy, one that they, together, could help to create. And when Dooku finally decided to officially turn away from Sidious, it would give him a great relief. He no longer wanted to be the Sith apprentice. He couldn't see a way for the galaxy to thrive under the Sith, and he trusted Obi-Wan to help him end it. So Dooku told Kenobi the truth about Sidious. He is Palpatine, and he must be defeated. They would board the ship to Coruscant as two men who'd seen too much and still believed it wasn't too late to fix things. So they would jump to Coruscant with a meeting set with Darth Sidious. A meeting where Sidious would die, or Dooku and Kenobi would die. And back on Coruscant, Jango Fett would indeed bring Anakin to the spot where Sidious gave them the holoprojectors for their mission, deep in the industrial sector, inside of the Limerge building. The two of them would go together, and soon Anakin could feel Sidious waiting, not with fear, but with amusement. His presence in the dark side was suffocating, but Anakin continued on. Suddenly though, above them, Dooku's solar sailor flew into the hangar. Anakin would realize that if Dooku were here, he was in over his head. But from the ship, Dooku would enter with someone else beside him, Obi-Wan Kenobi. And inside the building, Anakin and Obi-Wan would see each other for the first time in these many long months. Time stood still as their eyes met, and Dooku quietly watched this reunion unfold. For a moment, 3 generations of Jedi ideology stood shoulder to shoulder, and Anakin realized Dooku would be fighting alongside them. Sidious then emerged from the shadows, hood down, no longer needing to hide. His yellow eyes glinted, voice sharp, mocking, goading them forward as his blade would ignite. Dooku stepped forward first, curved hilt igniting in response, and Anakin and Obi-Wan would follow. The battle quickly got underway. Dooku moved in, parrying Sidious's attacks as Obi-Wan closed in from the right. Anakin attacked with heavy overhead strikes. Sidious twirled between them with unnatural speed, blades slicing towards their robes. He hurled lightning into Obi-Wan, throwing him back into a pillar. Dooku countered with a slash to Sidious's side, but the Sith Lord spun, disarming him momentarily with a blast of more lightning. Sidious could tell as the duel continued that Dooku was slowing. Parries were weakening, and Sidious would strike a deep wound across Dooku's side, sending him to his knees, while both Anakin and Obi-Wan were struggling to find any opening. Anakin hadn't seen any combat lately, and Obi-Wan simply was not strong enough still. And as the Sith raised his blade for the killing blow, Obi-Wan would leap back in, intercepting it with a burning intensity. The two of them clashed again, Obi-Wan hanging on, sabers screaming in a storm of sparks. Sidious had the upper hand again. His power surged, pressing Obi-Wan to the edge of the hangar. Anakin behind him, slashing at Sidious, but the Sith Lord pulled out a second blade, sliced through Anakin's wrist, then kicked him back into the wall. Dooku rose one last time, the pain in his side nearly taking him out, but he used his final strength to lunge forward, impaling Sidious in the side this time, while the Sith was focused on Obi-Wan. It wasn't enough to kill him, and Sidious was able to throw Dooku back to the floor, but it was enough to slow him down, and Obi-Wan had his opportunity. He struck, blade slicing through Sidious's chest, and Sidious would collapse in silence. As Obi-Wan looked over to Anakin, he motioned that he was alright, and Dooku staggered as he collapsed into Obi-Wan's arms. It was a mirror of Naboo. Qui-Gon's final moment replayed in bitter symmetry. Dooku told Obi-Wan to make the galaxy better for all, something he could never have done. Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Jango Fett would emerge from the dawn of Coruscant's skyline, battered, but alive. And while the Jedi had battled the Sith, Jango had been confronted by Cad Bane, and Jango finished it with him. The Sith were gone, and Obi-Wan would look to Anakin, and they told Jango to go. He will be free of his crimes. He can live a normal life with Boba if he chooses. And in the wake of Sidious's death, hollow recordings from the Limerge building, along with Sereno and his own office, revealed his control over both the Republic and the Separatists. The Senate disbanded emergency powers and began rebuilding under leaders like Bail Organa and Mon Mothma. With no one left to unify them, the Separatist Council collapsed, and the war came to a sudden end. The clone army would lay down their weapons after Grievous was destroyed, and the galaxy began to find peace again. Obi-Wan returned to the Jedi Temple forever changed. He told the Council of Dooku's final days, and the Order began to listen as Kenobi laid out everything they were doing wrong. And over time, Yoda stepped down. The Council reformed. The Jedi no longer sought a direct partnership with the Senate, they sought understanding within each other. Anakin would soon be given a Padawan in Ahsoka Tano, and when it was all over, on Naboo, Anakin would kneel at Padme's grave. He would tell her the war was over, that he helped end it by choosing to stop the cycle of hatred he was on. He would leave his lightsaber beside her as a symbol of peace. He'd get a new one in time, and he and Obi-Wan would stand side by side once more as brothers, as the Jedi would live on, and for the first time in a long time, the future seemed clear. And folks, that is our story for today. Thanks for watching this one. It was fun. It's an idea that I had a couple weeks ago, I don't know, and I was just like, hey, I like Attack of the Clones. It's probably my favorite movie in the Star Wars saga. Let's do a story on that and just the Battle of Geonosis. And, I'm just explaining to you the title of the video now. But anyways, appreciate you guys listening. Yeah, I thought it was fun. There were many, many, many routes to go on. You can kill all 3 of them in the arena. You can kill none of them. But I think Padme has to die. The whole thing, the whole movie was like, assassination on Padme. So if the Jedi never show up, her time kind of runs out there. And maybe I did think of a different path where Anakin kills Django, then joins Sidious, and he and Sidious fight Obi-Wan and Dooku, but I don't know, it was a little too... It just didn't work when I was trying to think it out, so I like the one with Boba helping to see Anakin, that he's becoming the very thing he swore to destroy. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you thought, and I'll see you in the next video.